This video is about the seven patterns, excuse me, within the proximity groups. If you're not familiar with the proximity groups, you might want to listen to a couple of videos prior to looking at or watching this. But primarily, this for those that are interested in this, you're definitely interested in gaps up, because in other videos I have identified the one video is the number one best way to find gaps up. We're not going to be talking about gaps down in this video, only about gaps up. When we have a gap up, the best method that we've come across is three different patterns. That would be the one pattern and the two pattern group, having a total indicator count of more than 12 if you're in a two pattern, and the proximity group and the trend red down touch. Preferably we're down touching the pink, or down touching red is down touching some other color, but trend green and gray can be down touching as well, and we'll still end up with decent results, provided that we have the three groups all showing up at the same time. When you have the high indicator count, when you have the downtrend the downtrend examples, and we like the trend red the best, as I said, and then of course the proximity groups. Now, if you haven't read the document about proximity groups, you should do that. We hand-drawn 7 of those patterns that we use. And when those 7 patterns show up, they are the signal for the good condition of the proximity group. And with the other two conditions at the same time, or the other two patterns at the same time, we then have a gap up high probability situation. Now, there are other types of examples in which the proximity group qualifies. One of them is a crossover. It's not listed on the 7 proximity group patterns document, but it does work. We just don't see it as often, or maybe we don't look for it as often. I'm not sure. But in any case, you have to have the power 4. That's the blue, the pink, the white, and the yellow line, all having crossed over the power green and power orange. When they do that on that day, when you find that on your scanner the night before, that they've all crossed over, you then the next morning when you see that scan prior to the open, you can grab a hold of that as a continuation pattern, meaning that it's real likely that the power 4 lines will go up. Excellent way to stay in a continuation pattern. Obviously, if you're going to catch the gap up, if you're going to catch the crossover pattern within the power 4 lines, you also have to have the high indicator 1 pattern or 2 pattern example there, and the downtrend example or pattern there. So you always have to have those 3 groups occurring at the same time. It's just that I wanted to make you aware that there are other examples other than what's drawn on the 7 pattern page in the documents file, but or wait a minute, I'm not sure if it's in the doc. It's under the patterns category. When you look at when you click on the pattern types up, you'll see a document file where that says pattern group gap up. And so anyway, I wanted you to be aware of that, take note of that, because this is truly a unique system that we have here. It's a detailed system, but if you are willing to identify with what's moving the changes, and for us that's not that hard. It takes a while to pick up and see the indicators. You need to expand the subcharts when you do to make sure that your line is up or down, and identifying what you have in the way of identical patterns. So we're excited. We are just amazed at what this system will do. Forgive me, I've said this before on other videos, but I kid you not. The sensitive indicators are the heart of the system, and without those working together, we paired those up, but we also synchronized many of those 22 indicators to give them the right, what we felt was the right reaction to given market forces as that we could recognize. That, as long as we're on that topic, market forces can be difficult to separate. You can see them in the indicators, but you can't always tell what they are, and who knows by name what they do or what they are. But we can see them on the charts, and that's the important thing. So glad you had a chance or at least I hope you had a chance to listen to the #1 best method for finding a gap up. These 7 indicators within the proximity groups are critical. You have to have the power 4 above the power red, or specifically above the power green. I said that wrong. Specifically above the power orange. There are exceptions to that, and that is that when you have 3 days down, sometimes your white and blue are underneath the power orange. But that doesn't make any difference. As long as you've got the other 3 main groups, the one pattern, the down touch, and the proximity group, at the same time, you're still going to see a gap up, or at least it's going to be a high probability of a gap up, very high. The other thing, too, is that on the radar screen, we have a proximity group indicator that has these signals. There's also a color code page in the color codes. Print that out, become familiar how they respond. Excuse me. This particular method that I'm talking about, the best method of finding gaps up, is one that as soon as you find it, there are going to be many people that will work this system because of its accuracy, because of its high probability in price direction, and all the other things that go along with it, and that supercomputer connection that I've talked with. And when I refer to the supercomputer, I'm talking about the exchange computer. Why can we have a pattern with good conditions that'll have a high probability above 95%? I mean, sometimes 99%. How in the world can that happen? unless you're somehow connected with and running with the same formulas that the supercomputers are running at the exchanges. I don't understand why the accuracy is so high. High probability it has different flavors to it, but the high probability on the day trading Visual Basics system is just unbelievable. And we'll be the first to say that word, but we're also the first to recognize how the three powers of the system work together to accomplish this this type of results that we see. So again, we're excited. I think you will be too. Record your information on Excel. Excel's a powerful tool. After you look at this video, find some gap up situations and go and analyze them. Record them with 10 or 15 different columns in your Excel and see what the similarities are. Learn that power green and orange, the power green and orange difference, DIFF, that we call it, or the spread, is almost I don't want to say the wrong thing here. Is very, very low. When I've commented in previous videos that you need to have situations in which the power green and the power orange are real close together, but I mean 0.15 or less. That the high percentage of the gap ups have that spread between power green and power orange. Calculate, mark that spread in as one of your columns. It doesn't always happen that way. Don't think that it's mandatory. I mean, keep in mind that you're gonna go with the accuracy when you see these things, and very seldom are you going to have downturn, or very seldom are you going to have or let's see, how do I say this? You can be looking at the three groups, having accomplished the three groups, and you can have a situation in which you have a high identical indicator count, and you can have a trend red that is in a down touch pink or something like that, and it can go down. There are others. You always need other supporting evidence to support what you're talking about or what's going to happen. What usually happens, and I hope I'm not confusing you, because what usually happens is you don't have the proximity group when you see the high indicators and the trend red going down. You got 2 out of the 3. You don't have the third one. Or you have the proximity group all under the power orange line. The difference is that you need to pay attention to detail. You need to have that supporting evidence. If you only have 12 identical indicators, that's the bare minimum for the one pattern. You definitely want to look and see if you do have 3 or 4 or 8 others that would ultimately give you a 2 pattern. As you get real high, the 18, 19, 20 identical indicators, those have a tendency, as long as you've got the other 2 main pattern groups, your down touch and your proximity group, those tend to be a high majority of the time gap ups. But this thing works great. The only problem is that individuals in their excitement fail to read the indicators, and that's what can give you some situation that you don't like. If by chance you get into one that you haven't read properly, if you're negative, get out. Bam. You bought something that you intended to gap up, and it didn't, and now you're actually under. For safety reasons, I say get out. Others might watch it for a while and see what happens, but generally speaking, you wanna get out of a situation if you're going in the wrong direction. Why stay there if you're going wrong? So, but we're excited about this. I did want to explain what I just explained, because the difficulty is not in the indicators. The difficulty is in the operator. And we'll hear of issues that were not read right, and that's unfortunate. And we encourage you to use the simulator. We encourage you to use the Excel methods to examine gap ups and gap downs, and just figure out what you got there, because these indicators will tell you what's happening. And definitely have fun trading.